Watching a disaster movie is always, it's a bit of a cathartic, viewing. Take, for example, I don't know, The Towering Inferno or 28 Days Later or um, what's the one about the the massive tidal wave and then it all freezes and it becomes a massive Arctic environment. Um, Whatever disaster movie you want, take your pick because when you view the movie, you know that, let's say, Twister, the movies about Twister, and sooner or later that Twister's coming. It's going to spin in there sooner or later, and it's going to wreak havoc. And this is essentially what the mini budget, or what Tang's mini budget has come to be viewed as. A monumental disaster in the making by one's, I think it was the Financial Times economist dubbed it as. And remember, they're not finished yet. Kutang is probably going to have an autumn budget, maybe in the next 1 to 2 months. We'll have to see. And he's already said they're not done yet. They are not done yet when it comes to bringing in more tax cuts, announcing more borrowing, and the chaos that is going to happen. But as I've said before, I'm not an economist. So in terms of sort of bringing the news to you, I sort of wait until the economists do their sort of pieces, and then I look at what they're saying, and then I go, okay, this economist is saying this, and this economist is saying that. You know how bad things are going to get. Well, we've got such a piece for you today, explaining just how bad this disaster movie economic blockbuster that Truss and Katang are currently in the motions of pushing forward on us. So here we go. So before we do this, though, please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link where you can buy me coffee. And thank you to all those people who get to buy me coffee every so often. And of course, thank you very much to everyone else who does support the channel with the YouTube thank you button. And of course, the Pony Club as well down below, where you get badges and whatnots and who's its and what's its and whatever. But as always, thank you very much to everyone. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. So let's get into this then, because put it this way, we ain't seen nothing yet, and that should bring even more worry. That should bring even more worries to you all. But anyway, today we're off to the Yorkshire Bylines and their covering of this. So, Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget last Friday has been greeted with skepticism by the global currency markets, to say the least. The newly installed but very recklessly self-confident Chancellor is said to be sort of sanguine about the prescriptions and the fall in the value of the following his statement in the Commons. While Martin Waller, the former Financial Times journalist, described it on Twitter as a monumental disaster in the making. And the pound has been falling since October of last year, when it could be exchanged for at least $1.38. By mid-August, the pound had already slumped to $1.22. But when the markets noticed that Liz Truss was emerging as the odds-on favourite to replace Boris Johnson, it slid even further and faster. And last Friday morning, as Kwarteng got to his feet, it had sunk to $1.13. And as he made his statement, it went into freefall, dropping another 5 cents in as many hours. And perhaps the most apt description came from the chief economist of the UBS Global Wealth Management, Paul Donovan, who said he now believes investors seem inclined to regard the UK Conservative Party as a doomsday cult. What a phrase. So, when the markets in Asia reopened on Monday morning, the pound hit its new all-time low against the US dollar, since its founding fathers created the currency in 1792, bringing it touching to $1.30 and was flirting with parity, something that would bring global Britain's crowning humiliation from its former colony. It was a 25% fall in less than a year, and most of it occurring in just the last month. The currency has since lived on a ledge and is now even recovering just a little of what trailers try and pause for breath before the next wave of big sell-offs. It is worth perhaps reminding ourselves just what a falling currency means. Effectively, the sterling has been devalued, making everything in Britain now worth much less, including our property, savings, businesses, and increasing the cost of imports. For example, at the start of 2021, the pound had been on average 15% weaker relative to the euro than it was before the Brexit referendum in June 2016. We imported £654 billion worth of goods and services in 2021, much of that from the EU. If we assume the sterling could have been 15% stronger, we would have remained in the single market. We might have even purchased the same quality of goods and services, but about £100 billion worth less, and that was just in 1 year. Think about that. Economists will say that the lower value pound should boost exports, but there is no evidence that our exports have been boosted. In fact, other countries are increasing their exports more than we are, in spite of the UK having an average or more competitive pound. This is driving up the current account for the trade deficit, the difference between imports and exports, to record levels. In the first quarter, the trade gap was at 15.7 billion pounds, or at least 8.3% of gross domestic product, compared to 11.3 billion pounds, that's 2% of the GDP, in the same period of 2021. This is totally understandable, and one reason why the currency markets take such a skeptical view of the UK economy. Some pro-Brexit economists argue that it's all down to the strength of the dollar, and there is some truth to that. But the euro hasn't fallen anything like as sharply as the pound. In addition, the value of the British companies has also fallen them, making them now easy targets for takeover by foreign businesses. And late last week, there emerged some suggestions that European companies are looking at picking up bargains, which means more profits are being reprinted over benefits of other countries in the future. Over at the Telegraph, Ambrose Evans Pritchard says that Kwasi Kwarteng's tax cluster bomb risks blowing up Britain's credibility. And in his penance, he mentions that the UK has a net international investment problem of minus 742 billion pounds, meaning that foreign companies now own over 742 billion pounds more in the UK than we own overseas. And with a weak currency, this will only get worse. Foreign investors are not gullible as the British right-wing media and take a hard-headed view of these things. A near 8% drop in the sterling's value occurred since Friday, following Kwasi's statement, showing that they don't much like what they see, and who can blame them. Kwarteng also proposed to pay for his tax cuts and energy support packages by increasing borrowing. And though arranged through the government's own debt management office, following his statement, the debt management office set out plans to borrow an extra £72 billion before April, raising the total for the financial year of 22 to 23 to a massive £234 billion. Kwarteng used it as an argument against the running structural deficits to try and boost the economy with greater spending and lower tax, because he claimed this type of discretionary financial policy had a, quote, poor track record. And the man with a PhD in economic history must now be hoping that he was all wrong about that. But yields on the UK growth bond did shoot up last week as investors recognised the increased risk. This means that not only are increasing our amount of borrowing, but also the cost of the money for the DMO. This is rising, and we are now paying higher rates of interest than even Greece and Italy. These are both nations with long histories of limping from one financial crisis to another. Think about that too. In 2016, Brexiteers complained a lot about our payments to the EU. The infamous £350 a week figure was, as we know, based on a gross amount annual that didn't even include our rebate of the EU regional and structural funding spent in this country. So it just happens to be that £350 million a week is about £19 billion over the year. But by a very curious incidence, we can actually see that figure of actually £19.1 billion was spent at least once a month on national debt interest. In June of 2022, this largest monthly amount of interest paid in the UK on debt records began in 1997. and was largely due to the effect of the rise in the retail price index on the index links linked to government bonds and the bond debt and interest rates on that increase. We can also expect more unwelcome records in the months and years ahead. Given these figures, it becomes clear why Truss and Keating fired the Treasury's permanent secretary Tom Scholar, as he didn't want the Office of Budget Responsibility to announce on their mini budget. However, if we get the next best thing, that is the long statement from Paul Johnson of the respected Institute for Financial Studies, who pulled no punches, saying, "Today, the Chancellor announced the biggest package of tax cuts in 50 years without even a semblance of effort to make public finance numbers add up. Instead, the plan seems to borrow large sums at increasingly expensive rates and put the government debt on unsustainable rising paths. The hope that we get better growth. This makes a dramatic change in the direction of economy policy making. Some of the longest serving cabinet ministers would be worried about getting a whiplash." And with the tax cuts and falling exchange rate expected to even add more fuel to the rising inflation, the Bank of England will almost certainly be forced to raise its interest rates in order to try and rein in people's spending power. But this is in direct opposition to Kwasi Kwarteng's tax cuts to avoid a recession. It's all totally incoherent, and as former cabinet minister and permanent secretary in the Treasury's Gus O'Donnell tweeted, "It's like driving with both a brake and a pedal on the accelerator flat to the floor." So also Sky News has claimed that Tories are quickly becoming disillusioned with Truss and her Treasury team. One former minister has reported to have said, "Liz is effed, she is F, and I think she's taking on the markets and the Bank of England. Her and Kazi, Phil, Chris, and Simon are playing A-level economics with people's lives. Her MPs are already be said to sending letters of no confidence to 1922 committees amid fears that she will crash the economy. And there is growing speculation that she and Kersey may not survive until Christmas. If it ever really began, Truss's honeymoon is well and truly over." And hopefully that's filled in a lot of the economic stuff and really sort of the consequences you're going to be seeing. And it's not good. It is not good. Where do we go from here? Well, I think we have to hope that they get replaced as quickly as possible, and that if the rumors are true that they won't make it until Christmas, then my pronouncement of, if you may remember, that though this Tory leadership contest, that we'll be doing this all over again very quickly, you know, it'll be even quicker than I initially suspected, because I said 6 months. That would have been April, May of next year. They may not even make it till then. So, as I've said, we've got to keep an eye on what happens at the Tory leadership conference. Not the Tory leadership conference, the Tory conference. That will certainly make for some very interesting watching. Expect a lot of very interesting talks around the fringes. Certainly around getting rid of Kwasi and Liz, while also trying to expect those hard right libertarians to try and talk up what Liz and Truss are doing, and expect there to be a lot of toing and throwing between these sides, saying how wrong either side is, all the while the pound continues to fall. And of course, you couldn't get it in any better if the moment Truss takes the stage and the pound just completely crashes, because oh my, will the Tories be in a massive panic at that conference then. Oh boy. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.